When you settle into a new home, there's no telling what the previous owners quietly left behind. It can take years before you stumble across all the tucked-away corners, and one spot almost always holds something strange: the basement. That cold, shadowy space where secrets go to rot. From forgotten relics to things that should have stayed buried, we're diving into the eerie, the twisted, and the just plain disturbing. These are the 15 scariest things ever found in basements. Number 15. Snake basement. For one family, the nightmare didn't slither in all at once. It started with what looked like a rogue sock on the basement floor. The daughter reached down, thinking nothing of it until it moved. That's when the unraveling began. Over the next week, more snakes began showing up inside the house, some in closets, others gliding across the floor like they owned the place. It turned out the basement had become a reptilian maternity ward. A pregnant snake had crawled in during the winter, laid eggs, and left her offspring to hatch in peace. With the room packed full of storage boxes and junk, the hatchlings had a buffet of rodents and a perfect hideout. 3 large snakes were eventually removed by professionals, but even they admitted that more were likely tucked away in the clutter. The family learned a brutal lesson: if there's one part of your house you're ignoring, chances are something else is making itself at home there. Cold-blooded and very, very real. Number 14. Moved into a new apartment. When you're renting a house, you don't exactly tear the place apart before signing the lease. It's temporary, right? Well, that was the mindset of an Irish student who landed a seemingly perfect apartment in England back in 2019. Clean, modern, and affordable. Until he noticed something weirdly strange. The layout didn't make sense. A wall where there should have been space. Then, he found the panel on the floor. He pried it open and uncovered a hidden staircase leading into a cold, crumbling series of rooms below. Dust, cobwebs, and stone walls that hadn't seen light in decades. Some corners looked like old prayer chambers. Others, like something far less sacred. There were old candle stubs, scorched markings, and graffiti that clearly hadn't been there long. That's when it hit him. This place had visitors. Recent ones. Whether it was a secret cult hangout or just an abandoned hideout, no one ever told him he'd be sharing his basement with the echoes of whatever the hell went on down there. What do you think about it? Number 13. World War II German Panzer tank. Most wartime souvenirs are medals, helmets, maybe a rusted rifle. But this man in Hakendorf, Germany, took the term collector to another level. When investigators came looking for stolen Nazi artwork and smuggled weapons, they didn't just find trinkets. They found a 45-ton Panzer tank buried beneath his house. Alongside it were a torpedo, an anti-aircraft gun, and several crates of vintage firearms. Everything was stored like a private arsenal in what should have been a wine cellar. The tank, though deactivated, still sent the authorities scrambling. 20 soldiers worked 9 straight hours to extract it, using cranes to hoist it through a specially widened path. The 78-year-old homeowner swore nothing was operational. That didn't stop prosecutors from launching an investigation into illegal weapon possession and violations of German war relic laws. It wasn't about whether the tank could fire, it was about why it was sitting beneath a quiet neighborhood home in the first place. Because who needs a garden gnome when you've got a Panzer in the basement? Number 12. Lost grandfather. In 1961, a father of 2 vanished without a trace. No note, no evidence, no goodbye, just gone like One Piece season. His sons grew up thinking he'd abandoned them, while their mother spent decades holding on to hope. She passed in 1998, never knowing what really happened. Then came Halloween night, years later. The now adult brothers were digging through the basement, looking for old decorations, when they noticed a section of wall that didn't quite match the rest. Behind it was a space no one had touched in decades, and a nightmare frozen in time: human remains. Their father's. Turns out he'd suffered a fatal accident while trying to fix some faulty wiring. Instant death. No one heard a thing, and with no reason to check the basement for years, his body was never found. What they thought was abandonment was just tragedy wrapped in dust and silence. Closure came late, and not gently. But sometimes the truth sits beneath your feet for decades, waiting for the right night to show its face. Number 11. House of Snakes. A single mom from Minnesota thought she'd found her forever home like any other normal lady. It was close to nature, affordable, and just big enough for her and her kids. But within days of moving in, she noticed movement near the baseboards. First one snake, then another, then dozens. By the end of the first few months, 95 snakes had been removed from the house, and that was just inside. Outside, the numbers were worse. They'd moved into a nightmare, and the basement was the beating heart of it all. Packed with traps, sealed corners, and makeshift barriers, the family fought to reclaim the space. Turns out the property sat dangerously close to marshland and worse, a garter snake den. Every time the season shifted, the slithering horror came back. She spent over $20,000 fighting the infestation, but every warm spring brings the same creeping terror. Dream home? Try reptile sanctuary. And the worst part is that disclosure laws didn't require the seller to mention a single one. All right, guys. Now, let's move to number 10, bear cub. In Minnesota, a family thought a squirrel had gotten into their basement, but what they found was a 50-pound ball of fur and muscle hissing from a corner. A black bear cub, confused, scared, and very much not supposed to be there. It had fallen through a narrow basement window left cracked open for ventilation. On the way in, it knocked over shelves, spilled paint cans, and left a trail of chaos. The growling echoed off the walls, and for a moment the family genuinely feared the mother might not be far behind. Armed with nothing but nerves and a laundry basket, they managed to trap the cub and call wildlife authorities. It was eventually released into the wild with no injuries, just one very shaken animal and a family with a memory they'd never forget. That basement window boarded up immediately. While stray cats are one thing, unexpected bear cubs crashing your home like it's a woodland rave, that's a whole other kind of problem. Number 9. Hidden Chapel. The Farlow family had lived in their Victorian house in Shropshire, UK, for 3 years before they finally opened the strange metal grate by their front hallway. It had always been part of the floor, just an odd feature they never got around to inspecting. But on Easter weekend in 2010, curiosity won. Their daughter, small enough to squeeze through the opening, climbed down and found herself standing in an underground room, a chapel. Dust-covered wooden pews lined the edges, and in the center stood a weathered wooden cross. This wasn't just some storage cellar, this was once a sacred space. In centuries past, when certain faiths were outlawed in Britain, believers built secret rooms to worship in peace. What the Farlows found was one of them, frozen in time, untouched for generations. Even more unsettling, a hidden staircase at the far end led directly into a cupboard in their dining room. For 3 years they'd been eating dinner just feet above a chapel buried by history and silence. Luck is a pretty witty thing. Number 8. Old House in London. London is a city stacked with centuries, and every crumbling corner hides a story. So, when a long-abandoned mansion, once owned by Thomas Theodore Maryland, was marked for demolition in 1960, no one expected it to become the site of one of the strangest discoveries in modern urban history. Maryland wasn't just any wealthy recluse. He was a known crypto-naturalist, the type obsessed with the unnatural. Tucked away in the basement were wooden crates stuffed with taxidermy oddities, miniature dragons, alleged vampire remains, werewolf fetuses, and other grotesque specimens suspended in cloudy jars. Even weirder, some appeared to be the result of human-animal experiments, with surgical scars and metal implants. It wasn't just a collector's stash, it looked like a mad scientist's final lab. The find was so bizarre that it sparked the creation of the Maryland Cryptid Collection Museum. And whether you're a skeptic or not, one thing's certain, you don't walk out of that basement feeling the same. Alright, now, let's move to number 7. Shark Tank. LaGrangeville, New York, 2017. Police raided a house looking for evidence tied to a white-collar crime. What did they find instead? A sweltering, humid basement with a massive 15-foot pool smack in the middle. Inside, it swam 7 live sandbar sharks. This wasn't some Bond villain setup. It was just a suburban home with a predator tank hidden under the floorboards. Alongside the living sharks were 3 more that hadn't made it, 2 leopard sharks and a hammerhead, their bodies left floating like grim decorations. The pool was too small, the water untreated, and the conditions barely legal, except it wasn't legal at all. No one knows exactly how the homeowner got them, but investigations showed it wasn't a one-time fluke. The surviving sharks were carefully rescued and relocated to the Long Island Aquarium, where they were stabilized by marine vets. But even now, officials still wonder what else was this guy hiding. You don't build a shark tank in your basement unless you're hiding a whole lot more. Number 6. Stalker in the basement. No infestation, no broken pipe, just something infinitely worse. In 2019, a young woman kept hearing strange noises from her basement. At first, she chalked it up to creaky plumbing or a raccoon, but the sounds didn't stop, and they were too precise. Footsteps, breathing, shuffling at night. Terrified, she brought friends over to check it out. Together, they went down, and there he was. Not a stranger, not a squatter. A man who had been secretly living in her basement for weeks. He wasn't just hiding, he was watching her. He'd only moved in after she did. He waited until her schedule was predictable. He knew where the cameras were, where she slept, and when she was alone. Authorities were called immediately, and he was arrested. But the mental scar, that doesn't vanish with a restraining order. She moved out not long after. No more basements, no more risks, because once you've had someone living beneath your feet, no room ever feels truly empty again. Number 5. 6-foot gator. Some people hide debt, others hide skeletons. This guy? He hid a 6-foot alligator in his basement for nearly 2 decades. In Michigan, a local electrician was sent to fix some faulty wiring. Seemed like a routine job, until he stepped into the basement and nearly had a heart attack. Staring at him from a rusted steel cage was a full-grown gator, alive, angry, and very out of place. The homeowner, who'd raised it illegally since it was small, apparently thought the cold basement was a perfect long-term habitat. Spoiler, it wasn't. The cage was filthy, the conditions awful, and the smell, don't even ask. The electrician finished his job, but not before snapping photos and tipping off authorities. Animal control arrived and removed the gator, who was somehow still alive. The owner didn't just lose his secret pet, he caught charges, fines, and mandatory inspections going forward. You have to wonder what he was planning, because keeping a gator like that? Well, that's not just weird, it's a whole new level of unhinged. Number 4. Underground city. In 1963, a man in Cappadocia, Turkey was knocking down a basement wall to expand his home when his hammer hit the open air. Behind it, not more concrete, but a dark tunnel. Curious, he kept digging. What he found next didn't just belong to his house, it belonged to history. The man had stumbled into the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu, a multi-level labyrinth built over 1,400 years ago. This wasn't just a bunker, it was a subterranean metropolis. Entire families once lived here in secret, hiding from invaders and natural disasters. It stretched 18 stories deep and could shelter up to 20,000 people. There were kitchens, wells, stables, even places of worship. Air shafts and rolling stone doors allowed the city to seal itself off. It was engineered like a survivalist's dream, if that survivalist happened to be a Byzantine genius. Derinkuyu is now Turkey's largest known underground city, and the idea that it sat beneath someone's feet for centuries, that's the kind of basement discovery that rewrites textbooks. Number 3. Mysterious well. Some people find old furniture in the basement. This guy found a cement-sealed trapdoor under a rolling bookshelf, and beneath that, a well. A deep, silent one filled with still water, but no pipes, no pumps. No signs of where it came from or where it went. The house's previous owner had covered it up completely, as if trying to erase it from existence. No mention in the paperwork, no reason for it to be there, just a concrete ring of darkness, holding God knows what below. The new owner never dared to go down. He wasn't about to climb into a bottomless pit in his own house. Instead, he brought in contractors and had it filled with cement. No exploration, no answers, just silence and heavy gray mix sealing up whatever secrets it was keeping. Some neighbors whispered about old wells tied to cult rituals. Others said there was a death there decades ago. Either way, the new owner didn't care. He just wanted it buried for good. Number 2. Skeletons in the basement. A woman walking into the basement of Klackberga Church in Sweden wasn't expecting to find human bones, but that's exactly what she got. Bags of them. Neatly packed, sealed, and shoved into IKEA bags. Blue plastic tombs for the forgotten. Turns out they were leftovers from an archaeological dig gone sideways. A few years earlier, researchers had been exhuming ancient parishioners' remains for relocation. Then, mid-project, the funding vanished, and with it, the crew. But the bones, they stayed. Around 80 individuals, some buried for over 500 years, were simply left in storage. No records, no ceremony, just a quiet, accidental disrespect tucked under a church that once honored them. Local authorities were horrified when it came to light. The remains were finally reburied properly, but the whole mess left a sour taste. It wasn't malice, just sloppy oversight. Still, there's something deeply unsettling about holy ground hiding bags of bones like attic clutter. It's a haunting reminder, even the dead aren't safe from being forgotten. Number 1. Guns and money. Moving into a house with leftover junk is annoying. Moving into one with a doomsday stash, that's a different beast. A guy bought a fixer-upper at a steep discount, figuring he'd deal with the mess later. But the basement, that was something else. Boxes piled high, furniture covered in dust, and in the back corner, a weird plywood wall. Something about it felt off, so he pulled it loose and found a hidden room no one had mentioned in the sale. Inside, dozens of gun cases, thousands of rounds of ammunition, and stacks of copper pennies, all pre-1982, back when coins were still worth something to survivalists. The kicker, a bolted safe that still hasn't been cracked open. The whole setup screamed prepper paranoia. Maybe he was gearing up for a nuclear fallout. Maybe something worse. Whatever it was, it clearly mattered enough to stash behind a fake wall. It's one thing to find a hidden room. It's another when that room looks like the opening scene of a post-apocalyptic film. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.